So now hopefully you've got a composition set up. So I've got two here. I've got one called Robin and I've got one called Batman. Now within our compositions we can add layers, and this is our layer panel down here. Okay, so we can go to layer, new, and we can add various different layers into our composition. But first off, I'm just going to teach you about shape layers and adding shapes into your layers. So we can either click on that and create a new layer, or more easily we can just click on this here. So if I hold down, as you can see, I've got a rectangle tool, I've got rounded rectangle tool, I've got ellipse tool, polygon tool, and I've got a star tool. Okay, or I can just hit Q on my keyboard to scroll through all of them, as you can see. So let's create a rectangle tool to begin with. Now if I hold down shift and drag, as you can see, I get a square come up on the screen that is a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, so both sides are equal. Now if I let go of shift, as you can see, it's more free formed. So holding shift, let go and shift, still dragging around with the mouse, and once I'm happy I let go of the mouse and then let go of shift. So at the top here, now that I've drawn my shape, you can see fill, it's got this like X through it, and even if when I select a colour here, I can change the fill colour. Now what happens if I wanted to go back to actually having no fill? So I can click on this actual blue thing here which says fill, and then I can dictate between actually no fill. I can even go for a gradient and go for a radial gradient as well. So I'm going to go for no fill on there. And then finally we've got stroke, so that's the line on the outside. So I can change the colour of that. Let's go down to black, and I can even change how thick the stroke is as well. Okay, let's add a fill in, so let's go back to fill and then awesome. So now we've got a thing in the middle, and this is called our anchor point. Now this is really important to make sure you have it where you want it to be. So next to the shape I've got pan behind, and it's also got anchor point tool, and if I press Y I can move around my anchor point. Now this is really important, because if we have a look down at our layer that's been created, so this is a shape layer, this is the layer that's actually been selected, and as you can see that was our anchor point before I clicked on the anchor point tool. If I click on my rectangle, the actual anchor point within this shape layer is in the center there. Okay, but I don't want to be messing around with that anchor point. I want to be messing around with the shape layer anchor point, and the way that I do that is by selecting the actual shape layer. Now this is really important. At the top here, as you can see, if I'm on here, I've got the fill and the stroke when I've got my my shape layer selected. But then if I click on the pan behind, I've also got this thing called snapping, and I can uncheck these or I can check these. So now what I can do with snapping on, because it's got a tick next to it, I can have it snap to the center of my my shape, or I can have it snap to the side. I can have it snap to any point within my shape. Now why is this important? Okay, let's just say I have my anchor point across here, and then if I later on, in a later tutorial, if I change the scale of it, so you don't need to know about this yet, it scales up from that anchor point, as you can see. If I change my rotation, it rotates from that anchor point. So actually you positioning that anchor point where you want it to be is really important. So let's go back, and so now let's go back to my anchor point tool, make sure snapping's on, and I can just drag that to the center there, and that's it.